Hello all. The weather is absolutely vile outside, so I thought it was a good time to do some railway modelling. Today's subject is this. It's another Hornby wagon. I'm not being sponsored by Hornby, although, guys, if you wanted to, then, send me a direct message and we'll talk. Actually, no, don't, because mostly what I talk about is how their old products could have been a lot better. Anyway, this is the Minera Lime Company wagon, for those of you who can't read the words Minera Lime Company there. It's actually, broadly speaking, the same tooling as the Arnold Sands wagon previously seen. Except it's got this lovely roof. It's a lime wagon. They had those roofs to keep the lime dry. I hope I'm not going too fast for anyone here. So once again, it's a very nice wagon, but it could be better. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the chassis. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos, I think, with these short wheelbase wagons, there's two different types of chassis you can get. This is the earlier one, which is less detailed. All the brake gear detail is in one piece there. And if you can live with that, then that's absolutely fine. But there is a better alternative. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be replacing the chassis on that lime wagon with this wagon here, which as you can see is in a battered state and has a car on it. I don't need the car. But if I turn that over, now as you can see that's a much more detailed underframe, looks much better. And second hand, it doesn't cost very much at all. If you're lucky, you can get these for £2 or £3 second hand, and it makes a big difference to the look of the wagon. So the body must come off the chassis. What you would normally do is you can sort of slide a flat bladed screwdriver or similar in between the body and the frame. I was quite lucky and I got this in a somewhat battered condition, so the body just comes right off. But what you can see there is that in each corner there's a hole which fits a corresponding peg on the chassis. If you have a well-made one, then do be careful when attempting to remove the body from the chassis, because you could damage the chassis. You could snap it. But if you're not planning to use the chassis, then maybe that's an acceptable casualty. I do have a use for this chassis though, so I'm just going to put that to one side. To remove the body from this wagon, it's a somewhat different process. Don't know if you can see there, but there's a sort of orange, kind of a pair of orange, tabs that hold the wagon on. Now, to get it off, you need to squeeze those tabs together gently. And due to the strong risk of something going wrong while I do it, I'm actually going to be a coward and not do that on camera. You'll probably need some sort of tool to get in there. I'm going to try these tweezers. This could, as I say, go horribly wrong. But let's see, I'm an optimist. Next up, I'm going to take the advice of the Rolling Stones and paint it black, or weathered black. Because, as you may know from previous videos, I quite like that colour for giving the effect of a dirty brown wagon. It just comes out a little more realistic. Once it dries, you can't see much difference at this point, than just having the ironwork plain black. The chassis is finished. I've just put that over there to dry. And the next priority is the wagon body. Now, as you can see, the roof has sort of lost some of its paint there. So I'm just going to go over it just with some grey. Actually, this is a pretty good match. I could almost, I think, get away with sort of only doing the parts that have been knocked. This colour is Mechanicus Standard Grey from the Citadel range. But you know what? I'm going to be artistic. You know, I'm going to have integrity. I'm going to repaint the whole thing. La la la. I was doing a little bit of research into this wagon actually. So the Minera Lime Company was founded in 1852 and closed down in, I believe, 1976. It was in Wales. It was actually a really very large company. So it makes sense that Hornby would choose this as the subject of their lime wagon. So again, the detail on this is pretty good. They've moulded a door in there, you know, it's nice, at the risk of sounding trite. Do you want to skip to the end? Let's skip to the end. And we are now about ready to join the two together. Now, unfortunately, the problem we have is that these components being of two different eras, they don't clip together. So we're going to have to use my dear friend superglue to stick them back together. So, let's put the weight back in. Very important if you want your wagon to run smoothly and not bounce all over the place. And let's get to work. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Okay, that looks fairly straight to me. Just going to let that dry for a bit. So the next step, and possibly my favourite step, is the weathering. So what I'm going to do for this is, lime wagons tended to get very grubby. Lime was very dusty, very dirty stuff. And what I'm going to use is my old favourite, watercolours. Watercolours, specifically white rather than the usual darker colour. And I'm going to apply it pretty thickly. Kind of want to get it everywhere. In fact, this kind of highlights why it's good to have a really detailed chassis, because you know, this really highlights every detail, literally. There we go. Want to get lots of it around the door. Now normally I'd be holding this wagon steady, and I mean, just generally that's a sensible thing to do, but right now I'm not being sensible for the benefit of the camera. I spilt my coffee earlier on, it was awful. See, that's already looking pretty good. And you see how simple these techniques are. I reckon this is going to look fantastic when it is fully dry. Like I say, I particularly want to get it around the door because that's where the lime would have been loaded and where you would most likely have got spillage. As the paint dries, because it dries pretty quickly, I'm sort of trying to blotch it around a bit, you know. Okay, let's have another time skip, shall we? I always like those. I reckon that's going to look pretty good when it dries. I know it sounds like I'm bigging myself up by saying that, but it's actually more of a testament to the quality of the moulding that with such a simple trick you can make it look so detailed. Do the kids still say bigging it up? I don't think they do they? I don't know, I'm really out of touch with these things. I can't even figure out if, like, bare means very much or not at all. Anyway, that's a whole other sidetrack. I'm going to let this dry for now. It is now 3/4 of an hour later, the watercolour has dried, and this is the end result. Which I think looks alright, you know. It's taken off the plasticky kind of sheen that you get. As with the Arnold Sands wagon, this is self-coloured plastic, which always kind of looks fake. So a little weathering is always in order. I feel like I could almost run it as is, but I'm not going to. I am going to play around with powders. So once again, I am using my old favourite matte eyeshadow, which was of course invented by Matthew Eyeshadow in 1932. And I'm just going to... I'm not going to go too heavy on this. So I'm going to use this white eyeshadow. Just to, I mean, literally just to make it look more powdery. Particularly around the doors there. One downside of watercolours is that they do look like, well, water. You know, they pool as a liquid. So, you know, sometimes they look more like, well, they're not so good at representing powders. That is finished and ready to go into traffic. Now, confession time. I've never actually weathered a lime wagon before, so I wasn't entirely sure how this would turn out. But yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I think that looks decent. I think it looks considerably better than the wagon I started with. But once again, I'd like to emphasise that I haven't used any sort of clever techniques. I haven't used any expensive materials. I don't have any kind of training. You know, it's really easy to upgrade your old train set wagons into something a little bit special. So, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you soon for another video. Have a good one.